Okay, well, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you call roll, please?
Mayor Pape,
Here?
Councilmember Shavetta,
Here.
Councilmember Hands,
Here.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Here.
Councilmember Leahy, Councilmember Neal,
Here.
Councilmember Ryder,
Here.
Councilmember Silvers, Councilmember Yodridge.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Our next item on the business is called the public items, and members of the public are encouraged to use this time to make comments about matters that do not appear on the agenda. Comments about items on the regular agenda will be taken up as each item is considered. Please note individuals making public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. I do have one individual here that has signed up, and that's Mr. Mickey Braden. You can come to the podium, sir, and give us your name and your address for the record. Okay.
Hello, my name is Mickey Braden. I live at 9675 West 61st Street. As you are aware, the city of Merriam has secured funds from the federal government for the Upper Turkey Creek Flood Project. The city since then has published the 2015 study and recommendations to get Merriam out of the floodway. The 2015 study lists one residential property that will need to be purchased to complete the project. That property is my property, and I need to sell it by June 1st of 2023 to relocate for work. I'm asking the city to do something to help with the negative impact that has been caused by the release of the 2015 study.
Okay, so specifically, what kind of relief are you asking for, Mr. Braden?
I mean, the city could purchase the house, come up with something. I mean, it's going to be really hard to put the house on the market as is, pending what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. Does anyone have any, Mr. Neal,
If I could, normally during public items, we don't address them, but I told Mr. Braden that it'd be in his best interest to come up and speak to the council. He did a good job of articulating the situation. He has a home that he needs to sell in June. We have a report from 2015 that says the possibility exists that the core project might need to acquire his property. Well, to be quite honest with you, it says a property to acquire. He is correct in 2015. As we've shared with council, or staff has shared with council, the Army Corps is just going through validating all of their studies. That was a preliminary design from 2015. They're going to spend the next several years figuring out if that design works, if that design doesn't. Is there another design? Does that design need to be modified? So the situation exists where we do have a study that shows his property as being acquired, but we don't have confirmation from the Corps that we will need that. We don't know if we will need that property. So it puts him and his family in a tough situation of what do we do? Do we fix up a house to sell? We have a study that shows that that house might be acquired, so it probably does have some sort of negative impact on his property value. But unfortunately, from a staff perspective, we don't have anything. We won't even actually have a list of properties to acquire until 2025. But as I've made the council aware, if we buy properties before 2025 that end up needing to be needed by the Corps, we will be reimbursed for them. And I've shared with Mr. Braden and his family, I met with him and his wife, that we would try to accelerate that process as quickly as possible. I think I've shared with him that I think we would have enough information, at least from a staff perspective, to make a recommendation to council, but it's not going to be, unfortunately, till about when he needs to sell his home. So he's really in a tough situation here that staff doesn't have a good recommendation to provide to the council. The Corps is not, doesn't have a good recommendation other than to say, well, hey, it's up to the city. If the city wants to buy the house, So that's why I've asked him to come this evening, or at some point in time, to speak with the council, speak with his elected officials, because from a staff perspective, I don't have a good recommendation to make. I can tell you that I'm sympathetic to his situation, but I don't have any data to make a recommendation of what are the odds we will need his house, what are the odds that we won't need his house, which means if we don't need it, we're stuck owning that house and we won't be reimbursed for it. But again, there's a report that's been out there since 2015 that shows it as the Corps probably needs that property if the current Corps project is the one we move forward with. So I appreciate him coming up here because I don't have an answer for it. I usually try to have at least a single answer or suggestion for council. I don't have one. I mean, the options aren't very apparent to me. So yeah,
Shadrich, go ahead.
May I have the address again?
9675 West 61st Street.
he's at the dead end just to the south of Campbell Park. He's the last home. I believe that we purchased his neighbor's home with FEMA flood money after the flood of '98. So I think back in maybe about 20 years ago. Does that sound about right?
That's about right.
We purchased his neighbor's home because it was a frequent flood home. We did that with federal assistance, but we knew we had federal assistance.
Thank you, guys.
No one has any additional?
Well, we could make this a topic of discussion. We could have a work session. I don't know that I'll have more information than I have right now to have it to meet with his timelines. That's the issue. The issue is he and his wife have said that, hey, they'd be willing to fix the house up to sell the house. They understand that it needs to be fixed up, to make it sellable. But also, what's the point of investing in the house if you're not going to get the money back or it's going to end up in the landfill? It's a tough nut to crack. I just don't have a real good recommendation. I mean, I think what it'll come down to is a gut check. Do we think we're going to end up with that house, and we either decide we just buy it and get stuck with it if we don't need it, or we buy it and hope that the Corps needs it? I mean, that's the problem. We don't know. It's too early in the process. And he's not alone. We have individuals that are leasing property down along the creek that have reached out to the city to say, hey, I've got a long-term lease. I'm supposed to re-sign in the next 6 months. Am I signing a 10-year lease? Am I signing a 5-year lease? Am I signing a 2-year lease? And we just have to tell them there is a report. This is what the report says. Plan accordingly. I mean, because we're subject to the Corps' engineers. I mean, we don't. I don't have, as I've shared with him, I don't have anything to share with him. There are no secrets. There's just no information either. But we do have a 2015 report that shows his property needs to be acquired to implement the 2015 project, if that's what we end up going forward with. So, I mean, I would be comfortable saying if that project is the project and we go forward with it, it's very likely we would need it because it was called out in 2015. I'm comfortable saying that, but they're validating that study right now. Lots of things have happened and changed with the floodway since they pulled all that data 15, 20 years ago, which is how old that data was when they did the final report.
Mayor, this is Dave Neal.
Go ahead, Mr. Neal.
I want to ask a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you mentioned there are other properties that are in the same situation. Are they, how many, and are they residential? Because it sounds, either way, it doesn't really matter, I guess. It sounds like we may have an issue that we need to sort of philosophically discuss. At least I would like to know more about the potential exposure. But I do see that it's a relevant question for the Upper Turkey Creek project, moving it forward. How's that going to affect other property owners? And so I would like to suggest that we do have some sort of a work session or something to sort of discuss these things.
I can answer the question. There's 4 other properties. They're all commercial properties. He is the only residential property that's currently called out on the 2015 preliminary design. All the other ones are commercial. But that would be, to answer your question, we'd have to have a work session. We'd have to sit down and say, what do we want to do? What do we not want to do? What do we think is right? What do we want to set precedent on? What do we not want to set precedent on? Because what we do now, we have to have a real good reason to not do it if we're not going to do it again and again and again. So that would be the path forward.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping we could do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal. Did you have some, Ms. Ryder, before I go ahead? Because she had her hand up earlier, and then I'll call you.
Is it okay if I ask what the selling price would be?
I would probably say let's wait until we decide philosophically what we want to do
Okay.
before we decide, because I'm going to guess whatever the selling price is it's going to be impacted by the study. So the selling price might not be relevant, in my opinion, which is, I would imagine his concern, is that what he'd like to sell that house for, he's probably not going to be able to sell it for. So then we would have to figure out what a fair price would be for his property and his troubles.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Judge.
Is there precedent anywhere nearby, or that we would have to do research on this? I wouldn't expect you to know off the top of your head, but precedent for situations like this?
The Corps I asked the Corps that. They had no suggestions or experience. Most of what the
come
Corps
on,
is working
Corps.
on is down along
Yeah.
the river bottom. So, I mean, it's
Right.
it's farmers, it's empty, it's vacant fields.
It's
not
West
in the-
Bottoms, it's, yeah.
Right, it's not in the middle of a residential and commercial district that they're doing these projects. So,
Right.
so we really don't have precedent from the Corps. I'm sure there's precedent somewhere out there, but
I'm
not
thinking
from the-
about places like where they have done, like Omaha, or areas where they have done, like turnaround in those kinds of districts, or
Yeah, we could-
Denver, or,
We could do some research and
Yeah.
see. Again, I'm sure there's somebody. has done
it'll take a
something.
little legwork, but
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Kendall.
We referenced the 2015 study. Was that when the floodplain was established?
Now, the floodplain was established prior to that. 15 study was the recommended plan. So there were
Okay.
several solutions.
When was the floodplain established?
The flood maps were when? 2009.
2009?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's what impacted the value of the property.
The floodplain?
Well, that's what put it into the floodplain, is
Well,
when the
I would
floodplain
I would argue it was probably already in the floodplain, but these are details we probably should
True.
wait till we get.
We just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess at this point, or is it the inclination of the council that we'd like to ask Mr. Engel to have some sort of work session?
Sort of
on
work
this?
session, we can discuss
Okay, all right.
next moves.
All right, thank you for your
Coming
time.
forward, and we'll be meeting and talking about this some more.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you. Okay. That's the only individual I had on the blue list, but is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward for public items? No, I see no one rushing forward, so we'll close out the public items section. The next item on the agenda is consent agenda. All items listed under this heading are considered to be routine by the city council, may be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Is there anybody that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, I see no one raising a hand. I don't hear anything from Mr. Neal. I would entertain a motion at this point. Go ahead, Ms. Hands.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve consent agenda items 1 through 3.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Okay, Ms. Shadrich.
Mr. Mayor, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Madam Clerk, please call for.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. A lot of it is just kind of things that are going to be coming up, but I do have several items. One of them is that Merriam hosted the Kansas League of Municipality Legislative Luncheon. We had several council members that were there that day, and we had a lot of council members from other cities and mayors and legislators, and we did it down at the community center, and a lot of people were very impressed with our community center and spoke very highly of it. So that was good from all around the state. Another thing coming up is the Kmart / I call it Drake Development Project. It's going to have a groundbreaking on November 14th at 2 p.m. And if you want to put that, oh, excuse me, 21st. Well, that would be because I didn't put enough numbers in that thing. Okay, the 21st. And that would be at 2 p.m. is, I assume, is the correct time still on that. If you're available, please try to put it on your calendar. Maybe you can attend. And the Johnson County Library is going to have their groundbreaking ribbon cutting ceremony at the Community Center Complex. And I think that's November 29th. Is that correct? We think. Okay. We think it's the 29th at 9 a.m. So.
That was confirmed late this afternoon.
Oh, it was confirmed. Okay. So we're all locked in on that date. That would be great. And then if you can attend that as well. So that then the National League of Cities Conference. I know several of our council members have signed up for that. That is, as a reminder, is coming up on November 16th through the 19th. And Mr. Engel has made arrangements to transport us down there and back, see him for times and dates or times that we're leaving. We know the dates. So, and then the Northeast Chamber of Commerce Gala will be held November 19th at 6 p.m. at the Overland Park Marriott. That was an RSVP thing. I don't know if we can still get anybody in at this point, but if so, if you haven't signed up and want to go see Mr. Engel, we can check that out. But that's all I think I have from the mayor's report at this time. Okay, moving along for council items. Where first item up is consider a professional service agreement for the design of the 50th Terrace in England to Kessler Drainage Improvement Project with BHC Engineering. And it looks like we have Director McDonald at the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm requesting approval of the professional service agreement with BHC for the 50th Terrace, England, Kessler Street drainage improvements with BHC in the amount of $159,810. In April of 2021, staff conducted a request for qualifications process for our 2021 through 2026 capital projects engineering. And at that time, we selected BHC Engineering for that stormwater improvement project. The project scope includes replacing deteriorated pipes and lining others from Kessler south to 50th Terrace, along with addressing the open channel behind 9224 West 50th Terrace. As most of you recall, that was one of the stops on the CIP tour. The project engineer will determine what improvements are needed to adequately convey runoff with the city and APWA criteria. The city does plan to seek funding from the Johnson County Stormwater Management Advisory Council for the allowable expenses for this project. The design proposal came back at $159,810. However, our budget estimate for these engineering services was $117,092. We're requesting to use available funds from the small drainage project budget to fund the $42,718 overage. I'm here to answer any questions.
So we have any questions for Director McDonald? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Shweta. Go ahead.
That's like a lot more than we budgeted for. Is that like just because market rates went up or just curious?
Rates did go up. However, when we first looked at this project, we planned on lining all of those pipes, and then some further investigation realized that we may have to upsize some of those pipes, and so that's going to require us to
More
get
engineering.
Yeah, more engineering, temporary construction easements, along with we may have to get some drainage easements because a lot of those pipes were put in years ago, and we don't have any drainage easements. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Director McDonald? Okay, there are no additional questions. I'd entertain a motion for this particular item. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Shadridge.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council authorize the mayor to execute the design services agreement with BHC Engineering for the 50th Terrace, England Street to Kessler drainage in the amount of $159,810.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ryder seconds. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Looks like our next item on the agenda is the Hotel Improvement Program, Transient Guest Tax Rate Discussion and Charter Ordinance. Looks like we have Ms. Jennifer Jones-Lacey at the podium.
Yes, thank you. Tonight before you, we have a couple of items, and this is related to our hotel improvement grant that we discussed with you last meeting or meeting prior. And this is basically an opportunity to look at all of our regulations surrounding hotels and kind of address all of it at once. And right now we wanted to talk about the transient guest tax rate and the charter ordinance, which are two separate things. Merriam's transient guest tax has been 7% since 2008, and in your packet, you'll see a list of our neighbors and their various transient guest tax rates. And as you can see, Merriam is certainly near the bottom. The only two cities near in our area in Johnson County or Wyandotte that have a lower rate are Olathe and Edwardsville at 6%, and every other city is either 8% or 9%. And because of that, we wanted to take this opportunity to address that and create parity with the other cities. We have a lot of programs that the city pays for out of the transient guest tax, and that includes economic development, tourism, the farmers market, special events, marketing, and of course expenses do not go down, they continue to go up. And this is an opportunity to address that. So what you have in your packet is a resolution to increase that from the 7% to 8%. And we're not actually asking you to approve that this evening. We're going to bring that to you at the next meeting that we have on the 28th and have you approve basically everything at the same time. Is sort of like a omnibus process. So that is the first, that's the first item. And then the second item is to open up the charter ordinance to allow transfers from the general fund into the transient guest tax ordinance. That requires a charter ordinance change because it is different from the state regulations. And this is not something that we specifically plan to do at this time, but it provides additional flexibility to the city if in the event that we want to transfer money from the general fund to further support economic development or tourism type activities. And so this is just an effort to allow for that to happen, provide more flexibility to the city if that were to come up. And then, of course, if we were to do that, it would be approved through the budget process, so you would know about it. It would not be something that we would do without your knowledge. So we thought, if we're talking about the transient guest tax and we're talking about the grant, why not bring it all up at the same time and bring it before you so you can look at it and approve it. And again, this tonight would be a first read because with charter ordinances, you have to do 2 readings. And then, well, we typically do 2 readings anyway. But you have to, after it's published, there's a 61-day waiting period. We have to publish it twice in the paper before it becomes effective. And then if this charter, if the tax increase goes into effect, if you all approve it at the next meeting, then the plan is to make it effective January 1st. And then next meeting as well, we're going to bring that hotel grant back to you. Have any further discussion, if anybody wants to ask any additional questions on that, and then hopefully we can have it all brought together and approved by you all. Any questions?
Any questions?
This is Dave Neal.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Neal.
Yeah, I was wondering on the charter ordinance, what do the state regulations currently have in them that prohibit funding the activities that you've listed here? Currently, is there any? I'm just trying to understand the need for this a little bit better.
Sure. So there are none of the activities that we're actually funding through the transient guest tax they're all approved per either our charter ordinance as listed or through the state statute. But in order to provide some flexibility, because this fund has been specifically hit hard by the pandemic. So let's say in the future some other significant event were to occur and it specifically impacted the taxes that are associated with this fund. And we wanted to, rather than moving things out of that fund, moving expenses out, we wanted to just supplement it with general fund revenues. This would give us that opportunity to do that.
And are there certain types of things that we can't do that under the current state statutes and charter fund or charter?
Right, correct. So the current charter ordinance does not, or the state statute does not permit us to transfer money into the transient guest tax fund. You can do it via a charter ordinance, which is what we're trying to accomplish this evening.
Okay, that was the first question. The second one has to do with the tax rate change, and right now we're in the middle, but on the lower end. And I am hesitant to see us make our hotels slightly less competitive because they're obviously going to be higher price per night since we already are already worried about occupancy rate. That's just a kind of a thought.
Sure. And one thing I did want to point out is that Karen Crane, our Visitors Bureau Director, did send notice to all of our hotels to let them know that this was on the agenda to be discussed. And she only heard back from one, and that general manager just thanked her for letting them know and also for the grant that we're proposing. And so he was very supportive and everyone else was silent on it. So we did not get the indication from the hoteliers that this would be a big concern for them, at least not after our notification. And I think they're very grateful for the fact that we are seeking to help them in these other ways through this grant, that this is going to be really a non-issue for them. And also, the rate is so slight of a difference, I can't envision it creating any sort of competitive disadvantage for us.
Is that it, Mr. Neal? Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine for right now.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Hans.
So I'm going to respond to Mr. Neal's question. When I look for rates of where to stay online, don't usually see what the tax rates are. You just see what the room rate is. So that's one thing. I want to just be sure that everyone understands we're not talking about putting the grants into this tax fund. We're just talking about hotels altogether.
Correct.
And somehow it feels like it might be getting a little muddled.
Sure, and I don't want to create that confusion. And certainly on the 28th, I want to make very clear in the staff report that our plan right now is for the grant to be in the general fund because that's where all of our grants are and it makes the most sense. But in the future, like I said, if there is a great need and that fund has been depleted to a certain point, we may need to bolster it with those funds. And again, like I said, you all would be well aware of that if we were going to go that route.
It's for events and economic development in particular.
Yes.
So, okay.
Any other questions from Ms. Jones-Lacey? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Yep,
You'll
and,
be back with us later.
Yeah, you just have the first read of the charter ordinance, so I guess that's it.
Right.
Okay, then. All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for helping us out. Okay, well, moving on, it looks like the third item on council items is consider approval of the 2023 salary range. So we have Mr. Engel approach the podium.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Next item on your agenda is approval of the 2023 salary ranges. The City Council has a standing goal and has since I got here, which I congratulate you on for your dedication to your employees, that you want to recruit and retain the best talent in Northeast Johnson County as a standing goal, and that's a budget goal. So this year we put money in the budget to complete a comprehensive salary market study. If you will recall, we actually put this in the budget in 19 for 20, but due to the COVID pandemic, we felt that it wasn't appropriate to go forward with this, nor did we think we would be able to find the third-party vendor to do it in 20, so we pushed it to 21. 21, we pushed it to 22, so it's a couple years overdue because the last one we had was in 2013. So it's actually been 10 years since we've actually went out to the market to verify what our salary ranges are. That doesn't mean that we don't do a periodic check-in. Sometimes we have employees that come to us and say, hey, look, it looks like I think my position may be a little bit higher than it was. We have those conversations, and from time to time, those things actually will move outside of just the regular salary increase that comes on our performance evaluation. But the council goal is to recruit and retain the best talent in Northeast Johnson County. We are a service industry. We can't do anything, none of the great things that our residents recognize and appreciate without good people. So what we did is we went out and we had a bid process, and we hired McGrath. I think I've shared all this in the past, or at least it's been shared with council. And after several months of their research, they have come back with this report, which is a recommendation for salary ranges. When we did the 2023 budget, we had salary ranges that were approved that were just based upon our normal formula of moving the ranges X% based upon CPI. As you can imagine, CPI has went through the roof. Market studies have went through the roof. I will tell you that this information probably will be irrelevant in another 2 or 3 years again anyway, because everyone is doing a market study, as you can imagine. We are competing with not just each other in terms of local government agencies, but with the private sector. So there's been cities that have changed their whole pay philosophy. We have kind of maintained our pay philosophy in terms of we want to recruit and retain the best in Northeast Johnson County. We have a very robust benefit package. We allocate funds for values, Team Merriam type things, employee events, things that are outside of compensation that I think are part of the full compensation package. So compensation is not strictly tied to salary, but salary is very, very important. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is that when we went out and we did the study, or when McGrath went out and did the study, we held everyone harmless, meaning that the implementation of this study was not going to harm anyone. And what I mean by that is we do have a handful of employees because of their great tenure in our organization that are above market. They've just received their increases year after year, but they've been here for 15, 20, 25 years, some of them in a very similar position that doesn't have like a step process. We did not move anyone back in market. They will continue to get their increases, so that was very important to us. Most importantly, we were able to bring up and shore up the bottom end, the beginning end, which is where really we were getting behind, which you'll find in this study is that we have a great tenure rate with all of our employees. Our employees, once we get our hooks in them, in about 3 to 5 years, they don't go anywhere generally. But it's that younger mobile generation, if you will, where their acuity for the greener grass is a little bit different than the people that have worked in the organization for a while. So it's really the lower end that we wanted to look to, but there was movement throughout the ranks. We tried to make sure that we kept everybody in the range where they were before, so that again, there was no harm on anybody within the plan. We have a handful of folks who what we call red circle. Those are people that are topped out at the current range, the range that we're living under right now. We will move the ranges, assuming that council approves the salary ranges, and they will be back in play, if you will. But some of them within another 2, 3, 5 years, they'll top out again. But within another 2, 3, 5 years, we'll probably need to do this again because salaries are on the move. So what you have in front of you is the recommended salary ranges for all of our employees. We would, if the council so approves this evening, we would incorporate that into the budget to take effect on 1/1 of 23. So on 1/1 of 23, we would adjust the salary ranges. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yeah, what's the bottom line on?
Bottom line,
impact
great,
of
I'm
the
sorry I
new
didn't bring that up. We budgeted at $500,000 for implementation. We are going to stay within budget. So we have enough money to implement all of this.
Something less than 500,000? A lot less?
Just
a little bit less?
little tiny less than $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we will be able to stay within the budget.
Okay. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, this is Dave again. Is the what is the average rate change in these salary ranges? I mean, and that would be from the imputed range that we currently have, which is, has gone up by inflation adjustments, budget to budget, I assume.
I don't have an overall for all of the ranges individually. I don't think we didn't necessarily look at it like that. We looked at it as the market is what the market is. And if the market for a position has shifted and it went up by 5 or 6%, then the range went up by 5 or 6%. So I can get you that. I just don't have that off the top of my head.
What's our total payroll? It just went up by 500,000.
It just went up by 500,000, correct?
It will go up.
I mean,
It will go up on 1/1 of '23.
Right, and
Well,
what
it'll
is-
go up even a little more because we baked in a 3% increase.
Right.
So it will go up.
We know what we budgeted, and we add 500,000 to it, that's the increase.
Well, there's going to be some benefit costs. There's other spin-off things that come off of salaries. But yes,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Okay.
bulk.
Yeah, I was interested in just some sort of a general
But he was asking
sense
about
of
ranges.
how that's going to impact, the compensation going forward, because there's also going to be additional room for movement. So I was just kind of looking at how the overall ranges, as opposed compared to the number of employees that are affected, or just sort of some general number. And I understand that's hard to come up with, but I just kind of wanted to feel for it. That's what I was asking, and that's fine.
I don't have that number. I can get it for you, though.
Okay, thank you.
And I think in the report, it said most positions had increased. There were some, that implies there were some that did not.
There were. We have a handful of positions that are at or above market. Generally, you could broad brush put those in two camps. You could either put those in your very tenured employees who have moved through the range throughout the course of the year, and there's not really a promotion spot above them, or brand new folks that came in and negotiated a salary that was more aligned with the market than our range was. So we hired them higher than the range was. And again, kind of almost magic the way it works out. You kind of go, oh, wow, apparently they knew more than we did in terms of the hiring because they're closer to the range. So it's a handful of folks that will not receive an increase.
And then I also was very proud to hear that our tenure number, I'm not remembering the
It's
right
fantastic,
terminology,
yeah. It's
is so much
fantastic.
higher than the national average.
It is.
so.
It is, and I think that we try to toot our horn on that, but so we also do it somewhat silently that, if we can get our hooks in people, I think we are an employer of choice. I think once people get here, they see the benefits, the support, the empowerment that they have working here, the support of the council. Again, you have a council goal. There's not a whole lot of councils that have a goal. It may be baked into how services are delivered, but to explicitly state that we want to recruit and retain the best talent, that's a forward-looking, progressive statement in terms of how we view our employees.
So
And
we
the
can
employees
all be
appreciate it.
proud.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions for Mr. Engel? Okay, I see no additional questions. At this time, I would entertain a motion. Ms. Hands.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve the proposed salary ranges to take effect on January 1st, 2023.
Do we have a motion? Shveta?
I second.
We have a motion, second. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk? Okay, it looks like our next item is the November CIP update. Looks like we got Director McDonald coming forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've got your November CIP update. Some of this is an update to the memo you guys already have in your packet. We'll first start off with the West Frontage Road project. The majority of the curb and the sidewalks have been completed. The mill and overlay is complete with the exception of the area near the tracks. We left 25 feet on both sides of the track that they plan on taking care of next week. The curbs and sidewalks near the tracks are scheduled to be completed this week, including the railroad pedestrian panels. We heard they weren't anywhere to be seen, but they showed up miraculously the other day, so we're pleased with that. And again, the asphalt will take place early next week due to weather conditions. We're going to try to get it in this week, but asphalt plants will not produce asphalt at 30 degrees. So it'll be probably Monday or Tuesday when we get it in next week. And unfortunately, that'll extend the road closure at the railroad tracks until that time. So substantial completion date, November 18th, and we're still on schedule. And they have a few built-in extra days in there, but we're right on schedule for that project. The next one I have is the 55th Street Improvement Project from Merriam Drive to West City Limits. Kansas Heavy is finishing the curbs and sidewalks on the north side of 55th Street. They're in the process of removing removing and replacing curbs and sidewalks and driveway approaches on the south side of the roadway. They've gone from Hayes up to Knox today on the south side of the roadway. Evergy is in the process of relocating their poles on the south side of 55th Street. Once those are done, AT&T, cable, and fiber will be next. The substantial completion date is May 31st of 2023. The contractor still hopes to get a lot of the concrete done and hope to asphalt before the end of the year if we have an open time in December. The 2022 Mill and Overlay Program is completed. The final payment and approval was on tonight's consent agenda. That project was $52,000 under the approved construction contract, so we saved a little bit of money there. And the final project we're working on currently is the Merriam Drive street improvements from Johnson Drive to 55th Street. BHC is currently working on design for this project. We have our final public meeting on December 14th from 6 to 7:30 at the Merriam Community Center. That's going to be an open house style. We'll have plans. We plan on having some sort of, I think it's a 3D video of what this is going to look like down on Merriam Drive. And shortly after that, we plan on having that project go out to bid. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Director McDonald? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Shadrich.
This might be something Chris can answer more, but we have a steel plate now on Hawker and Knox where they are fixed our mysterious leak. They're getting to it. Okay.
I'll look into it.
Okay, cool.
Water one, they left it there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
We will probably find it tonight if it snows deep enough.
That's well, it's
It's going to be
kind
my
of,
question. What's the weather going to do?
well, it was an over the ground steel plate, and now they've like smoothed it, so it's a smoothie steel plate, but it's still a steel plate. So it made me think they weren't coming back for it pretty soon. So
We'll see what we can do to expedite that.
okay, thank you.
This is Dave again. I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Neal.
Yeah, on the presentation that you're going to be making in the open house, is that going to be available online for people to view?
I think we'll be able to post the video online. The plans will probably be too large. I can see if we can get some architectural drawings of some of the finer points so we can post that online also.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping that the video would be up there too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Ryder?
I was asked to ask you why the curbs on 55th Street are like a shallow slope instead of a sharp.
Oh, the low back versus the high back. There was currently low back curbs on there now, so we replaced with the existing curb. There's no real reason to put a high back curb in there. A lot of times in residential areas, they'll put those up to help direct drainage, but there's no reason. We didn't have any drainage issues on that project. Kind of looked it up, and there's also some good reasons for it. That's going to be bike lanes up there also. And that will actually get a person on a bike a way to go. If you have a high back curb, they're stranded, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Director McDonald? Okay, I see no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's see. We got Park and Rec Advisory Board minutes were in our packets. Does anybody have any questions for Director Slocum? She's in the audience. It looks like you're off the hook again, this month, okay. All right, Mr. Engel, we have any additional staff items there?
Only item I have is just to reiterate the points that you made about our groundbreaking. Hopefully, everybody can be available for one or both of those. And I will be out of the office Wednesday through Friday at NLC with many of our council members downtown at Bartle Hall. So, but I'll be available by phone if I'm not here in the office.
Okay. Good, Mr. Jones-Lizzie?
One request, if you all could vote
Oh, yes.
We don't need a motion to vote on that, right?
Nope. There you go. There, I think there's a little posted on each of those. Please put your name on it if that's the one you want. So. Anything, no additional businesses? I would entertain a motion, I think. Go ahead, Ms. Hands.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
We have a second? Ms. Shopridge?
Mr. Mayor, second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.